And we keep things rolling on a jam-packed edition of the Sports Cubicle here on WCPT 820 and Heartland Signal. Of course, visit us over on YouTube at the Sports Cubicle. Make sure you guys are subscribing us over there and leaving us a like to be notified every single time we upload a new segment and a new interview conversation that we're having here on the show. And the good times keep on rolling when it comes to talking baseball. When the NFL playoffs are right around the corner, you know it has to be some big news. And joining us is our brother from Cubby's Crib from heartlandsignal.com. He is Rich Eberwine. And Rich, thank you for joining us, brother. This time around, the Cubs are sending an all-star outfielder, big-time hitter to the Yankees. Cody Bellinger is heading to the Bronx for a right-handed pitcher, and there's some cash being exchanged. You're going to go into detail of exactly what the move was, but when you saw the trade, did you think this was a straight domino from the Kyle Tucker move just from a few days back? Did you think there was a chance we were going to see a Tucker Bellinger lineup mixing for the Cubs in April of 2025? What were your initial thoughts when the Cubs made that big move of Kyle Tucker and how it would impact where we're at with Cody Bellinger specifically?
Yeah, so my initial thoughts were this was definitely a trade I was anticipating, um, especially after the Kyle Tucker thing happened. I don't think Bellinger was sticking around necessarily if the Cubs hadn't traded for Kyle Tucker. But I think after that happened, it definitely made it a lot more likely. You just saw that in the rumors, and another reason is there was nowhere for Bellinger to play. Kyle Tucker coming in, like that is a guy who, is a defensive upgrade to Seiya Suzuki in right field, a guy that needs to be in the lineup. And you have, PCA in center field, Ian Happ in left, Suzuki's slotted to be the DH. You heard Jed Hoyer in his press conference before Kyle Tucker got introduced, saying that they're not going to move Michael Busch off of first base. They see him as a gold glove first baseman. So Bellinger kind of was the odd man out. So position wise, there was nowhere for him to play. Uh, Trade wise, he was the most tradable guy on the team. Just given the fact that Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki, maybe they would have had a market, but they have no trade clauses. So that makes it a lot harder to move them. You're not going to trade a guy like PCA like you really don't want to, right? Because that is a guy you can slot in at center field who's going to give you gold glove defense, young guy for years to come, right? Bellinger is only under contract for 2 years, and he had an opt out after this year, so he could potentially be gone. You don't want to move, you don't want to bank on him being your center fielder when he could opt out next year, and then you got PCA who can be there for years to come, right? So Bellinger was the most tradable guy on this team, and they also wanted more payroll flexibility. He had the most expensive contract on the team as well. They had to eat a little bit of it, but really not that much. 2.5 million this season, 2.5 million next season. So the fact that they were able to get the Yankees to take on that much money is a kind of a win in of itself, right? Um, as a Cubs fan, as a guy who was a fan of Cody Bellinger, who was very much a fan of his work here in 2023, right? He had like a kind of an MVP like season, like a renaissance back to his days, like in his first couple years with the Dodgers, right? Along those lines was the kind of season he was having. So it was tough to see him go, right? As a Cubs fan, as a guy who liked Bellinger, as he was a good clubhouse guy, he's a good player. He's very versatile, could play all around the field, swipe bags, good speed, like power. The guy that it's tough to see him go, right? Because this is a salary moving type of trade, right? Like they did this partially because they wanted more payroll flexibility. So in and of itself, it is a salary dump kind of move, right? Especially when you take into account who they got back. It's a 30-year-old swingman type pitcher who has had very little major league success. I think he's only got a handful of starts in the MLB. So it is kind of a trade that you look at it, and if you don't have a lot of the context around it, you're like, man, that's just the Cubs being cheap. But when you take all that context into it, it kind of makes sense, right? And then the other part to digest this is what do the Cubs do next, right, with that money? And that's kind of what we're going to have to wait and see. We don't know what exactly that will be, but that's going to be coming in the weeks and months to come.
So, Rich, this is why we're really lucky to have you on because you're able to break down what we are seeing on the roster, why it made sense for Cody Bellinger to be moved, even if we're being cynical about it being a salary dump. But for the Cub fan that is concerned, for the baseball fan that is interested, even if they didn't have a position for him, you are still losing an MVP caliber player at times, somebody who was really good on defense, somebody who was versatile, and you're going to have to find a way to replace it. And it's going to be on young baseball players. It's going to be on auxiliary players that you bring in. What do you tell to Cub fans as you're doing your research heading into the winter months, heading into 2025, on ways the Cubs can supplement all that at bat power, all that versatility that they're losing now with Bellinger heading to the Bronx?
So it's going to be tough. I think that um, the replacement for Bellinger is Kyle Tucker, right? Like that is the one-to-one replacement that you're getting, and it is an upgrade, right? From what you had last year from Bellinger. Kyle Tucker, his floor projects to be just a straight upgrade from Bellinger's floor, right? That's what you're banking on. You're also banking on guys like Matt Shaw, who is projected to take over at third base full time. If not at the start of the season, at some point during this season, they're hoping that he will take that step forward and be comfortable stepping into a major league starting role at third base, right? So they're banking on that. You're also banking on Michael Busch continuing to progress. And let's be honest, Michael Busch progressed a heck of a lot last year. That was his first major league season, and he hit 21 bombs. Looked more than capable of handling major league pitching, at least right-handed pitching, right? And when the season started, there was a question about his defense at first base. And then by the end of the season, you're looking at him and you're like, he's one of the best defensive first basemen in the league right now. So Michael Busch, at least staying where he is or taking a step forward, maybe is what you're looking for. I don't anticipate this team making any more major additions on the offensive side of the ball. Um, you know, there's just not enough room unless they go after Alex Bregman or something to slot in at third base, but I don't anticipate that. He's a guy who is probably out of their price range for the amount of flexibility on the payroll that they have right now, and probably not a guy that they want to lock up long term, right? They would rather see what Matt Shaw can give them, roll with PCA in center field, see what a full season out of him can give you. And you're basically running it back with everybody except for Tucker slotting in where Bellinger was in the lineup at least. And maybe you have to bring in a bench bat or two. Um, Probably a guy who can play third base, ideally a guy who can play third and first, right? Because your backup first baseman was Cody Bellinger. Um, but yeah, I think a couple of bench bats is probably what you're looking at on the offensive side. And then uh, looking at Jed Hoyer reinvesting Bellinger's contract on the pitching side. Probably a one more starting pitcher and then at least one more seasoned veteran bullpen arm, preferably a lefty. So that's kind of what you're looking at on the offense, I think.
Are you excited? Do you have any type of pessimism, or are you anticipating anything when it comes to February when pitchers and catchers report from where we're at now in December heading into the holiday season and seeing how this team is constructed right now compared to where you were last season with Craig Counsell coming in and that excitement, and where you were a few days ago with Kyle Tucker being brought in, but them moving on from Cody Bellinger, confirming all the rumors? What are your feelings as a reporter and as a fan of this Cubs team heading into the 2025 spring training, calendar? And what is kind of that emotion going to now that you've kind of seen how the landscape is playing out a little bit for the Cubs?
I mean, here's the thing, right? Like the Tucker thing is very exciting. That is a move that tells me that they are looking to make the postseason. This is a make or break year, I think, for Jed Hoyer on making the playoffs, right? Like he's going into a contract year, and if he doesn't make the playoffs, you're kind of sitting here looking at, okay, back-to-back 83 win seasons, 3 straight years of missing the playoffs when you could have made them. what are we doing here? We need to start getting results, right? So that if that happens, I think there's a good chance that he gets replaced as the general or president of baseball operations, whatever. The guy calling the shots in the front office, right? Um, that being said, that's a move where, bringing in a guy like Tucker, even on 1 year, is like we are competing in 2025. You need to do more, right? Like this is not a finished product, right? We just said that, he needs to reinvest that money, and the money that they have to play with is about $40 million left. And that's, I'm going off numbers that were reported by Michael Cerami from Bleacher Nation. He pointed out that, roster resource kind of has them $50 million below the luxury tax. And typically what the Cubs do is leave $8 to $10 million before going into the season for, mid-season additions to keep them under the luxury tax. That didn't work out last year because they accidentally went over the luxury tax, but that's the idea, right? Maybe they'll leave themselves like 15 million this year so they're extra sure they don't accidentally go over the luxury tax. But point is they have money to spend right now, a little bit. So, and there's still quality free agents out there. I just wrote a piece on Cubby's Crib about left-handed relievers that are available. You got guys like AJ Minter, who's been a very consistent reliever and setup man for the Atlanta Braves for many years. He's still only 31. He's a kind of a guy that I would like to see them target and maybe bring in. I don't know if they'll go. I don't know if they have the cojones to go after like a Tanner Scott. I would like that, but he is going to be a little bit more expensive and probably going to command a multi-year deal. During the Theo Epstein, Jed Hoyer regime, they typically don't lock up relief pitchers and closers to long-term deals. The only time that's ever happened was Craig Kimbrell in 2019, and that kind of did not pan out too well. The only time he started producing was in 2021, the year when they decided to blow it up. So that kind of backfired. So I think Jed Hoyer is a little bit gun shy to give long-term deals to relievers like that. Um, that being said, there's still guys on the market. You could go after the middle of that market, like a Kyle Finnegan, who's been thrown around, or maybe a Kirby Yates, who's an older guy, but still has some gas left in the tank. And maybe you can get him on like a 1 or 2 year deal, right? So that's where I'm looking at. I would also be excited to see them add another starting pitcher. Um, my pie in the sky is Corbin Burns, but that's probably not going to happen because it would essentially take up the rest of their payroll, right? That they have flexibility for. And, it would be by far the largest contract the Cubs have given out in team history. So I think it's very unlikely, but a guy can wish, a guy can dream here. But yeah, there's other guys, Jesus Luzardo has been thrown around a lot. That is an intriguing option, a little bit riskier in my opinion, because he's only had one season of major league success. And you already got a guy like that when you signed Matthew Boyd, who's, hasn't had a quality season in like 7 years, basically. So I would like somebody without a lot of risk that you can slot into the rotation and give you, 150 plus innings. That would be nice to see. I don't know if it's on the free agent market or the trade market. So again, Hoyer has work to do. But to your point, I'm rambling right now. But to your original question, yes, I am a little excited because I think Jed Hoyer, he may have a fire lit under him, and the fact that his job could be on the line, and the playoffs is kind of playoffs or bust for him, right?
There's so many interesting questions that come up when they make moves and so many answers when they make other moves. And it goes from, how does Jed feel about his job security? Does he want to stay longer? Is he ready to move on? How does Tom Ricketts want to make the maneuvering of wanting to make money and wanting to spend money, wanting to be a competitive winner, but also being a smart spender as an owner? I want to know how Kyle Tucker feels about coming into this city, into this organization, and the kind of money he's looking for. What's the landscape of the Cubs going to look like in the next 5 years? There's a new CBA right around the corner. There's so much that is going to happen, and the Cubs are going to be right in the middle of it because of being the big market team that's trying to compete, that has money, that has stars, and the more we know, the less we know. And I think that's what's fascinating. I think we're super lucky here on the Sports Cubicle to have our brother, Rich Eberwine from Cubby's Crib, from Heartland Signal, to come in and make us smarter each and every time we put on the red alerts. The sirens are blaring that the Cubs have done something that has Cubby Nation freaking out. Rich joins us to calm things down and to make us a little bit smarter. Rich, thank you so much, brother, for all the help in the 2024 calendar year throughout the baseball season, especially the last few weeks. You've been a superstar for joining us. We appreciate you. Please, you have a happy holiday. You guys got stuff coming up the last few weeks of the year for Cubby's Crib, right?
Oh yeah, I'm constantly, I'm in full swing right now. I'm looking to write whatever I can. So check me out on Twitter. It's at Rich_Ebbs. I repost all my Cubby's Cribs articles there. There's one going up tomorrow about well, I think by the time this comes out, it'll be up, but what Jed Hoyer can do to reinvest Cody Bellinger's contract. So kind of touched on it here, but yeah, constantly articles going up.
It's going to be good reading for the holiday season when you're getting ready to make your food, hang out with family on a long car trip. Rich has got you covered. Rich, happy holidays, brother. Thank you so much for all the help in 2024. And thank you, each and every one of you, for being part of these therapy sessions for Cubs and White Sox conversation. He is Rich Eberwine. He is our brother, Cubby's Crib, and of course, HeartlandSignal.com. We have a whole lot left. Can you imagine that? We still have a whole lot left on this edition of the Sports Cubicle on WCPT 820 AM and Heartland Signal. Check us out over at YouTube at the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado.